Hey everyone, so I wanted to do one demo that's a little slowed down, looking specifically at how we're going to look at matching colors, layering up colors. There's probably a lot of different ways to get to the same color. I tend to go with a little bit more of like exploratory methods of layering. If you want to make it a little bit more like math, like there's a real answer and a formula, then I definitely look through your swatch pages and get as close as you can just looking at those. But you know, we have pretty limited colors usually at our disposal as far as our pencils. So it's really using your color theory to figure out how you're going to approach this. So I think I'm gonna choose this green right here, which if you can look in at sort of where we're at here, sometimes it'll zoom in. Because of the litho, like we talked about, there's this underlayer of pale blue, and then this is a pretty bright yellow. It's actually very close. You can see how the lines continue, the same yellow that's used in some of the darker areas of this yellow background. So I will either try to find a pencil in my group that matches that pale blue and that yellow, or I will try to find a pencil as close to the color they create, which is this like just off chartreuse little extra bit of teal in it. So I'm gonna zoom you back out just for a minute here. We're looking at that color that I circled right there. Let's see what kinds of blues I've got that are close. And I like to swatch just right next to it. So remembering that I've got light pressure options. That blue has a little bit of green in it, so we're not gonna go for the ones that are really, really bright. But that's pretty close. What if I did it light touch? That's not bad. And I actually like it a little better for vibrancy than this one here. So that one's not too bad. What else have I got? I also have light touch of this one. It's a little washed out and it has a little tiny bit of like almost a purpley periwinkle, so it's not going to warm up as nicely. So we don't like that one as much. This one is just very, very light. Could be useful. We'll keep it around. Could be nice for burnishing if we need it. Now that is actually pretty close to the color of this darker blue down here. Very nice to layer in for this darker shadowing. But if we're looking at that blue, I would use this one maybe to make this color. But for the background blue on that, I'd put between this one and the one that we like. Sometimes if there's a shade that's darker but close to the color like this, I'm gonna have to press harder with this pencil to get that amount of color because it is lighter. So I'm gonna pick the darker one because I can press lighter and have a lot more space, which leaves me more room to blend. It doesn't have to be that way, but I'd rather cool it down than try to be pressing really hard with my first layer of color. So I'm just gonna go ahead and sharpen this one that we like. You can see why I swatched them because this certainly doesn't look like it's that blue in the background, but that's why we check. So I'm gonna lay down kind of a light, we'll just do it like it's one of those intermittent fan colors if we were doing 1, 2. Okay. So real lightly. All my greens were a little too vibrant for this, which is why I want to mix it with pure colors to get more specific. Once you've got enough pigment on there in the green, it's going to be hard to pull it back out. So let's look for this yellow now. So I have less of a selection as far as, look how tiny this little nubbin pencil is. That's sort of my hot tones. I don't know, they give me a lot of blues, but they don't give me a lot of yellows. So if this is what I've got, we're gonna have to make it work. This lemon yellow here isn't half bad. This one I think is gonna be way too orange, and we know that orange and blue mixed together actually not a great look, right? So that's gonna make it a little muddier, but we kind of want a little mud because this isn't super vibrant. These colors aren't, you know, neon. So if it goes a little muddy, that might be okay. So one thing that I can do, because I did swatch here, is maybe look at what it does in the swatch. And that is very, very close. So then we talked a little bit about ignoring the stippling, but that some of you were worried that it might look flat with that. You can see how the stippling makes these lines of texture because of how it's laid down. If you are interested in preserving it, you can kind of make sure that your pencil strokes do the same thing. I'm going to go lightly over it this direction and then continue with my little edged pencil strokes. And then I'm seeing that yellow even in the background of this more vibrant one, or darker, more tealy one. So I'm going to do a couple little touches of it in here. Sort of color matching two colors so you can see it. You can see when my pencil moves in the same direction as the grain. Let's see if it'll zoom in. It starts to blend a little better already on its own than when I'm doing little chick-chick-chick-chicks. So I do like to try to follow a little bit in the same grain with it. It's pretty close, but it's not quite as vibrant, is it? So let's go ahead and also do a little Now for this, since we are right on the money with color, but it could go more yellow, I'm going to actually bounce over to maybe, let's see what it would look like if I use this cream to blend those. So for my burnishing, instead of using that yellow, we're real close to the color values that we like right now. It would go too yellow. If I use the blue, it's gonna go too blue. If I use the white, it'll cool it down. It might make it a little gray, but since we're pretty close, I'm gonna use this cream color, which is a favorite blender for me, and just burnish. If I wanted to preserve more of the texture, I could burnish across and create that hashing. So remember that when we're burnishing, what we're doing is actually reactivating all the different layers, the wax in those layers, and helping them mix together. So for this one over here, we thought this color might be pretty good, right? I've got that one, or I feel like this one's gonna be too green. Ooh, I don't know. Maybe a little bit both. So I'm kind of looking at this one as my guide. So what if I did the darker greens in the corner because it's a little denser, and then switched to that more turquoisey color. Now this is where you kind of want some of that texture, it feels like. We talked about finding it especially in the... You could go through and do little textures. It'd help if I sharpen my pencil, wouldn't it, team? But now that's quite bright, so I'm actually gonna see what happens if I once again and you can see how burnishing just softens all the textures also, because you are creating this like rubbing that is moving the wax. Even if you go pretty hardcore with that stippling texture, it's gonna blend it back in. So those are very, very close to what we see in our research image. All right, so that's how I look at doing this for this hat section here. I'm gonna flip you over. You're gonna see that this is not currently actually a perfect match. And I used a lot of different colors getting there. So we are pretty burnished already. So one way that you can kind of continuously burnish, but now that it's closed, now that it's burnished, it's waxy, it's like color's not gonna go down to it as nicely. You can kind of use that to your advantage. So I can go through and continue to burnish it and bring in some of these like pink tones that it's missing. But because it's already sealed, this isn't going in all that strongly. It's just sort of doing, it would almost be like doing a glaze kind of in watercolors, or It's like a translucent layer, which can be very helpful when you're trying to figure out just how to get it to look like that color. So I see a lot more pink, a lot more heat in this. So that was like a hot pink. What if I brought in even a touch of this red to warm it up? So you can see that that's starting to get much closer, and each of these layers is also helping to darken, because I think getting dark colors can be one of the hardest parts of this project. A lot of us don't have the perfect, really deep color. So this is like black mixed with purple mixed with green, so all of those colors add up and eventually help you get to the darker tones. So I'm catching some of this color here that we haven't actually done the hair yet, but I think sometimes it's nice to slow down these demos so you can get really close to them. Now up here, this is a little too pale. It's actually really close to the color and the value, but it's just a little not as warm. So let's see what I've got. I feel like this is gonna be, that's close. But because if I press down hard though, which is what it's gonna take since this is sealed, it's gonna go dark. So that's this color here that you're seeing. So if I turn my pencil sideways and do, Lily was actually talking about this in class, turn it sideways and use a light pressure, you can kind of glaze color in, even on top of one that's burnished, without cutting into the waxy surface, which is what a lot of pressure on a sharp pencil is gonna do. This is a good way to sort of tint your colors, get some of that life back in there. Now it's a little too orange. Let's go back to that pinky color, but one that has a bit of white in it. Is that my palest pink? See, that's orangey pink. That's actually very close to the color of it, but if we do that now that's too orange, it's just gonna increase the orange, right? So we want a cooler pink. I think this might be my best option. I could almost, like a purple would be too cool. Okay. With this, I'm using a little bit more pressure because the lighter colors, I want this to pick up more. And since it's a pale pencil to begin with, it's not going to be putting down that much pigment. You can see we can get pretty close to what those colors are. This to me now seems a little dark. So even though it's entirely burnished, you can go through. But remember, the white will cool it down. So let's maybe look at, maybe this is light enough. And then right along here, we want it to actually be pretty white. So even though this is entirely sealed, entirely burnished, I am able to still add in a couple highlights, carve out some shapes. So don't think that they're ever like past the point of workability. Nice thing, you don't have to wait on dry time. So you can just sort of keep futzing, keep filling with it until you get it to be exactly what you need it to be. You can get very, very close to color matches if you really take your time, even if you don't have that many colors. It is nice to have, you know, a set of true primary colors. If you can locate those, you'll go through them faster, but it's nice to have those and know which ones are your truest tonal matches for like really, really good primaries that you'll be working with to create your color mixes. But it's sort of just the gist of it. I hope that that helps, and let me know if there's anything else I can do.